The grand gala was in full swing, with champagne flowing and laughter filling the air. Alexander Blackwell, the billionaire CEO, scanned the crowd, his eyes locking on his wife, Olivia. She was laughing, her eyes sparkling as she conversed with a handsome man standing too close to her. His hand brushed against her arm, a gesture that seemed innocent, but to Alexander it was an offense he couldn't ignore. The tension in the air thickened as he made his way toward them, his presence a storm brewing on the horizon. What happened next would shake his world to the core. If you're captivated by this intense drama, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories full of passion, betrayal, and unexpected twists. Don't miss out on the shocking twists and heartfelt moments that follow in this tale of love, power, and redemption. Alexander Blackwell was born into a world where everything had a price. As the heir to Blackwell Enterprises, a global tech empire, he inherited more than just wealth. He inherited expectations. At 40, he was at the top of his game. A billionaire CEO, a man who controlled markets, decisions, and people. Money flowed through his veins, and he built his life around it, believing that success in business equaled success in everything. But with all his achievements, there was one thing he couldn't control: his emotions. His marriage to Olivia had once been the pinnacle of romance. They were the perfect power couple, admired and envied by all. He had swept her off her feet with lavish gifts, private islands, and extravagant dinners. But somewhere along the way, passion faded into routine. What was once a deeply personal and loving relationship became just another transaction. Alexander gave her everything, except the one thing that mattered most: his time and attention. He had replaced love with luxury and deep emotional connection with control. In his world, everything was calculated: board meetings, investment portfolios, and even his marriage. Olivia, once full of life and ambition, had become a quiet figure beside him, her eyes no longer sparkling with excitement, but carrying a weight of silence. Alexander never noticed. His focus was always on the next deal, the next project. He assumed that as long as he provided, as long as he maintained his empire, she would stay by his side. But that illusion crumbled when he saw her in the arms of another man. In that moment, Alexander realized the terrible truth. His wealth and power could buy him anything except love. His empire, built on control, couldn't stop the one thing he feared most: losing the woman who had once been his everything. The grand gala was in full swing, and Alexander Blackwell stood at the center, surrounded by colleagues and investors. His eyes roamed over the crowd, landing on Olivia, who stood by the bar, chatting with a man he'd never seen before. The man was tall, confident, and far too close to his wife. Olivia, usually reserved, was laughing freely, her eyes lighting up in a way that felt unfamiliar to Alexander. Something in his gut twisted. As the man's hand brushed against her arm, Alexander's jealousy flared. His heart pounded as he crossed the room, his footsteps quick and deliberate. He couldn't remember when he had last felt this anxious, but the coldness in his chest was undeniable. His grip on power had always been unshakable. But this felt like an attack. As he reached them, the smile on the stranger's face faded. Olivia, sensing the shift in the air, turned to face him. "Is everything all right here?" Alexander's voice was low, icy with control. The man stammered an apology, clearly uncomfortable under Alexander's gaze. But it wasn't enough. Alexander could feel the heat rising, his pride taking over. He grabbed the man by the arm, yanking him away from Olivia. "You don't get to touch what's mine," Alexander growled, his grip tightening. The man's defiance faltered, and soon he was on his knees, begging for mercy. But it wasn't the man's pleas that hit hardest. It was Olivia's silence. She didn't try to stop him. She didn't even look at him. Instead, she turned and walked away, her presence suddenly distant. When Alexander entered their suite later that night, he found a note on the bed. It was simple but piercing, I don't want to be part of your game anymore." For days, Alexander found himself in a fog of confusion and frustration. Olivia had vanished without a trace after the gala, leaving nothing but that haunting note behind. He searched every corner of their mansion, flipping through rooms that once held laughter, now empty and quiet. He called her repeatedly, sent texts, but there was no answer. He tried everything he could think of. His mind raced through business deals, security footage, and even his private investigator, desperate to find her. But Olivia was nowhere to be found. As the days passed, the panic began to set in. He wasn't just searching for his wife. He was searching for a piece of himself that he hadn't realized he'd lost. The more he thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about the man at the gala. It was about something far deeper. Olivia's sudden disappearance wasn't a random act. It was a message, a test. But what exactly was she testing? It was then that Alexander began to wonder if she had orchestrated everything. The flirtation with the man, her absence, the cryptic note. This thought kept him awake at night. His mind spiraled, questioning every interaction with her over the years. He thought about the way he'd treated her, always putting his empire and business first, offering her luxury instead of love, power instead of emotional connection. Could it be that Olivia had reached a breaking point, and this was her way of pushing him to confront himself? But the more Alexander dug, the more he realized the stakes were much higher than he'd imagined. He started going through old emails and documents, things he had dismissed as insignificant. Among the clutter of corporate correspondence, he found a series of messages from someone named Ethan, strangely familiar, but not someone he could place. As he continued reading, a chill ran down his spine. Ethan was more than just a random flirt at the gala. He was someone deeply connected to Olivia's past, someone she had known long before Alexander had entered her life. Ethan was her first love. But the connection went deeper than that. Olivia had shared her secrets with him, long-hidden parts of her life she'd never shared with Alexander. In the messages, there were hints of a relationship that had ended abruptly, of trust broken, of promises made and never kept. For the first time, Alexander saw the cracks in the perfect image of his wife. The woman he thought he knew was someone else entirely. A woman with history, pain, and unresolved emotions. Ethan wasn't just a lover. He was someone from a time Olivia had left behind, yet had never fully healed from. The discovery sent shock waves through Alexander's chest. The realization hit him hard. He had never really known Olivia, at least not in the way that mattered. He had assumed that his wealth and power would bind her to him forever, but now he saw that he had taken her for granted. He had never asked her about her past, her dreams, or her struggles. He had never given her the space to be more than his trophy wife, his possession. Now, as the days stretched into silence, the truth became undeniable. This wasn't just about a betrayal at a gala. Olivia had been trying to show him something for years. She wanted him to see her, not as the woman by his side at extravagant events, but as an individual with her own desires, passions, and past. And all along, Alexander had missed it, buried under the weight of his own ego and control. As the days turned into weeks, Alexander's heartache grew. The more he learned about Olivia's life, the more he understood how deeply he had failed her. He wasn't just searching for Olivia. He was searching for the man he used to be, the one who had loved with his whole heart, before he got lost in the trappings of power and control. But could he truly change in time to win her back? Or was it too late? Alexander sat at a dimly lit table in a quiet cafe, his heart pounding in his chest. For the past 2 weeks, he had been consumed by the need to find Olivia and make amends. She had avoided his calls, his messages, even his desperate attempts to find her. But then, unexpectedly, she reached out. She had agreed to meet him. When Olivia entered, her presence was as striking as ever. But there was something different in her eyes. something guarded, something that Alexander knew was there to protect herself. She sat across from him, her gaze steady, but with a certain sadness he hadn't seen before. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was thick, heavy with everything that had been left unsaid. Finally, Olivia broke it. "You wanted to see me, Alexander?" Her voice was calm, almost distant, as if she were speaking to a stranger. "I need you to understand," he began, his words shaky. "I'm sorry for everything. The way I've treated you, the way I've used my wealth to control everything, including you. I know I've failed you. Please, just tell me what I can do to make this right." Olivia's eyes softened, but only for a brief moment. She sighed, shaking her head slightly. "You still don't get it, do you?" she asked, her voice tinged with both sorrow and frustration. "This wasn't just about the way you treated me. It's not about the money, or the control, or the things you think can fix everything." Alexander was taken aback. "What are you saying?" She leaned in, her eyes locked on his, unwavering. "The flirtation with Ethan. It wasn't just some random event. It wasn't about him at all. It was a test, Alexander. A test to see if you would finally wake up. If you would realize that you've been playing a game with me for years. You've treated me like I'm just a trophy, something you can control and possess. But that's not who I am." His chest tightened. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. "You were testing me?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady but full of hurt. "I wanted to see if you could love me for who I truly am, not for what I represent. Not as your arm candy, your perfect accessory, your obedient wife. I wanted to know if you would fight for me, not because of my beauty or your pride, but because you love me." The weight of her words crashed down on him. Alexander's heart raced as he grappled with the truth that had been staring him in the face for so long. He had been so focused on maintaining control, on keeping everything perfect, that he had never once stopped to truly see Olivia. He had never asked her what she needed, what she wanted, or who she was outside of his world of wealth and influence. I thought I was doing everything right," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I gave you everything, money, a perfect life, luxury. I thought that's what you wanted." Olivia shook her head slowly. "No, Alexander. You gave me nothing. You gave me things, but you never gave me yourself. You never gave me love, real love. You never gave me the chance to be more than just the woman beside you." His eyes welled with tears as the weight of her words crushed him. "I've been blind," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I've treated you like an object, something I can own. But I see it now. I see how wrong I've been. I love you, Olivia. Not for what you represent, but for who you are. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Olivia stared at him, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, there was silence. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you love me for who I am, Alexander? Or do you love me for what I can give you? Because until you answer that question truthfully, nothing will ever change." The days following their confrontation felt like an eternity to Alexander. Olivia's absence left an emptiness he couldn't shake, a void in the mansion that even the finest luxuries could not fill. The silence that once felt comforting now felt suffocating. He wandered through the empty halls of their home, each step heavy with regret, his mind replaying Olivia's words over and over. For the first time in his life, Alexander was alone, not just physically, but emotionally. His wealth, the empire he had built, no longer held the same power over him. He had always believed that success was the key to happiness, that his ability to control every detail of his life, including his marriage, was the ultimate achievement. But now, the truth was impossible to ignore. His success had been hollow. It had isolated him from the one person who mattered most. He spent the first few days in a haze of denial, trying to throw himself into work, to numb the pain. But the more he focused on business, the more the ache in his chest grew. His empire, His billions were nothing without Olivia. He had spent so much time trying to control every aspect of his life, thinking that money and power were the answers to everything. But in the process, he had neglected the very foundation of his happiness: love. Alexander had taken Olivia for granted, assuming that as long as he provided, she would stay. But she was not a possession. She was a woman with her own needs, desires, and dreams. He had never bothered to understand her. He had never stopped to ask her what she wanted from their life together. And now, it was too late. The realization hit him like a wave, crashing over him, drowning him in guilt. He thought back to the early days of their relationship, before the wealth, before the control. Olivia had been his equal. Their love had been fiery and passionate, built on respect and mutual admiration. But somewhere along the way, that had faded. The glitz and glamour of his world had overshadowed everything else. He had stopped seeing her as his partner, as the woman he had fallen in love with. Instead, he had seen her as an accessory to his success, a symbol of everything he had achieved. But now, as he sat in the quiet of their home, the weight of his actions was undeniable. He had built an empire, yes, but he had built it on the wrong foundations. Power, control, and wealth could never replace genuine connection and love. He could buy anything in the world, but he couldn't buy Olivia's heart. And that was the one thing he had always wanted most. In the silence, Alexander began to truly reflect on his life, the choices he had made, the people he had hurt, and the mistakes he had ignored. For the first time, he realized how much he had taken for granted. His relationship with Olivia wasn't just another asset to be managed. It was the most important part of his life, and he had almost lost it. Days turned into weeks, and the pain of Olivia's absence continued to eat away at him. He realized how selfish he had been, how his actions had pushed her away. She had loved him once, but love had to be nurtured, not controlled. He understood now that love wasn't something to possess or own. It was something to give freely and cherish. The tension between his old self and the man he longed to be became unbearable. Alexander knew he needed to change. He could no longer rely on wealth and power to define him. If he truly wanted Olivia back, he had to prove to her that he could love her not through grand gestures or possessions, but through understanding, respect, and honesty. He had to show her that he could love her for who she was, not for what she represented. As the days passed, Alexander began to take small steps toward change. He reached out to his staff, not to issue orders, but to genuinely ask about their lives. He spent time with people, listening to them, learning about their struggles and their hopes. He realized that he had never taken the time to listen to anyone before, especially not Olivia. His world had always been about him, about what he wanted, but now he was learning to see others, to understand their needs, and to offer something more than just his wealth. The reflection wasn't easy. He had built walls around himself for years, but now he had to tear them down. He had to confront his own arrogance, his own belief that he could control everything. He knew the road to redemption would be long, but he was determined to take it. The man who had once prided himself on his power was now humbled by the realization that true power lay in love and humility, not control and dominance. The days that followed his self-reflection marked the beginning of Alexander's transformation. No longer was he the arrogant billionaire who believed wealth could fix everything. He understood, perhaps for the first time, that the essence of life lay in genuine human connection, not in power or control. His first step toward change was something small but significant. Alexander stopped buying Olivia extravagant gifts. He had always thought that diamonds, luxury vacations, and designer clothes could make her happy. But now, he realized that they were nothing more than empty symbols. Instead, he began to offer her something far more meaningful: his time, his attention, his presence. He started showing up in ways he never had before. Not as the CEO, but as the man who loved her. He began to take an active interest in her day-to-day life, listening intently to her thoughts, her dreams, her fears. He asked questions he had never thought to ask before, questions that went beyond surface-level pleasantries. He began making small, thoughtful gestures that reflected the change in his heart. A handwritten note left on her pillow, expressing his gratitude for everything she had done for him. Cooking her favorite dinner at home, just the two of them, without the distractions of the outside world. Simple things, but things that spoke volumes. Alexander also made an effort to connect with her on a deeper level. He stopped viewing their relationship as something to be managed or controlled. Instead, he started viewing it as a partnership, one built on trust, respect, and love. He asked Olivia how she felt, what she wanted from their future, and how she envisioned their lives together. For the first time, he was listening to her, truly listening, not just hearing the words she spoke, but understanding the emotions behind them. At first, Olivia was hesitant. She had been hurt too many times, too deeply, to open her heart to him again so easily. She saw the changes in him, but a part of her remained guarded, unsure if this transformation was genuine or simply a temporary effort. For years, Alexander had used his wealth to manipulate situations, to control the dynamics between them. Could he truly change? But over time, she began to soften. She noticed the small, meaningful gestures, the way he took care in asking about her day, the way he no longer made her feel like an accessory to his success. She began to see that Alexander wasn't just trying to buy back her affection with gifts. He was offering her something real. She could feel the sincerity in his actions, and slowly, she started to believe in the man he was becoming. As they spent more time together, the walls that had once separated them began to crumble. Their conversations grew deeper, more intimate. They talked not just about their business, but about their fears, their hopes, and their shared past. They laughed together again, truly laughed, in a way they hadn't in years. Olivia found herself opening up, sharing parts of herself she had kept hidden for so long. Alexander had earned her trust, not through grand gestures, but through consistent acts of kindness and understanding. For Alexander, every moment of connection with Olivia felt like a victory. He no longer felt the need to dominate their conversations or prove his worth through lavish displays of power. Instead, he felt a quiet satisfaction in simply being with her, in allowing her to be her true self, free from the pressures of his world. It wasn't an easy road. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. And there were moments of doubt, moments when both of them questioned whether they could ever truly move past the pain of their past. But with each passing day, the bond between them grew stronger. Alexander learned to relinquish control, to let go of the need to manipulate every situation. He realized that love wasn't something to possess, but something to nurture. Olivia, too, began to see the man Alexander was becoming. He was no longer the man who tried to buy her love, but a man who was willing to change, to grow, and to be vulnerable with her. She saw his humility, his willingness to admit his mistakes, and his sincere efforts to become a better man. For her, for them. Slowly, her heart began to open again, and she found herself falling in love with him all over again. Their relationship was no longer built on power, wealth, or control. It was built on mutual respect, honesty, and, most importantly, love. Alexander had learned the hard way that love couldn't be bought, manipulated, or controlled. It had to be earned, nurtured, and protected. And for the first time in years, he felt truly at peace with Olivia. As they spent more time together, their connection grew deeper than it had ever been before. The emotional distance that had once separated them slowly faded. They were no longer living in separate worlds, but sharing the same life, the same journey. Alexander knew that his wealth could never compare to the joy of simply being with her, of building a future based on something real. 6 months had passed since the night of the confrontation, and Alexander had worked tirelessly to rebuild not just his relationship with Olivia, but the very foundation of his own character. He had long since stopped trying to win her back with gifts or grand gestures. His world, once driven by the pursuit of wealth and dominance, had shifted. Now, his actions were motivated by a desire to be a better man, to prove to Olivia that he could be the partner she deserved. But even as he worked on himself, Alexander knew that actions alone wouldn't be enough. There was still something missing, something vital that he had to offer her, something that would show Olivia just how far he had come, how deep his transformation truly was. And so he planned one last thing, a gesture so simple, yet profound, that it would speak volumes about the man he had become. It was early one morning when he finally called Olivia, asking her to meet him at a place she hadn't visited in years, the park where they had shared their first real date. It was a place that had been significant to both of them, a quiet retreat from the noise of their busy lives. Alexander had chosen it deliberately, knowing that it held memories of their early days together, before their love became tangled with ambition and power. Olivia arrived with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Though they had grown closer in recent months, there was still a part of her that wondered if this was just another attempt at control, another attempt to buy her heart. But as she stepped out of the car, she saw Alexander standing by the old oak tree that had witnessed their first conversation, their first kiss, so many years ago. He was dressed simply, in a crisp white shirt and jeans. No flashy suit, no designer watches, no grandiose displays of wealth. "Olivia," he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion, "this is where it all began for us. A simple park bench, a simple conversation. But for me, it felt like the world had shifted. I thought I knew what love was, but I didn't. I thought I could buy it, control it. But love doesn't work that way." Olivia looked at him, her eyes soft but uncertain. "I remember this place," she said quietly, her voice filled with memories of the person she once knew. "But things have changed, Alex. We've changed," he nodded, taking a deep breath. "I know, and I've changed. I used to think that I could fix everything with my money, my status, and my control. But what I've learned is that love isn't something you can possess. It's something you give freely, without expecting anything in return. I've spent so many years focused on everything else, but now I know what really matters. You matter, Olivia, not because of what you bring to my life, but because of who you are. And I want to spend the rest of my life showing you that." The air between them seemed to crackle with the weight of the moment. Olivia stood still, her heart racing. She had heard him say similar things before. Grand promises, bold declarations. But this time, there was something different. His voice wasn't filled with arrogance or pride. It was filled with sincerity and vulnerability, something she had never truly seen in him before. "I've made a lot of mistakes. Olivia," Alexander continued, his eyes meeting hers with a depth she hadn't seen before. "But the biggest one was thinking that love could be bought. The love I have for you, this is real. This is the kind of love that requires sacrifice, patience, and understanding. And I am willing to do whatever it takes to prove that I've changed." Olivia's heart ached as she looked at him. She could see the man before her, no longer the arrogant billionaire who had once treated her as an accessory to his success. She saw the man who had worked to become better, who had humbled himself and opened his heart to her in a way that was nothing short of extraordinary. She knew, deep down, that this wasn't just another empty promise. He had truly changed. Without a word, Alexander reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple box. He opened it to reveal a ring, but not just any ring. It wasn't a diamond-studded piece of jewelry meant to flaunt wealth. It was a delicate silver band with a single modest stone. It was a symbol of something more profound than wealth or power. It was a symbol of his love, raw and unembellished, yet more valuable than anything he could buy. "Olivia," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "will you marry me? Not because of the man I was, but because of the man I am becoming. Will you take this chance with me to build something real, something lasting?" Olivia's breath caught in her throat. She had spent so many years questioning their love, wondering if it was worth fighting for. But now, as she stood there, looking at the man before her, she knew that this was the moment. She had seen his heart, she had seen his transformation, and she knew, without a doubt, that the love they shared could stand the test of time, if only they both fought for it. "Yes," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "Yes, I'll marry you." The relief that washed over Alexander was indescribable. In that moment, everything fell into place. The journey he had been on, the painful growth, the self-discovery, the humility, had led him to this moment, to this love, to Olivia. And as they embraced, the world around them seemed to disappear. There was no more power, no more wealth, no more control. Just two people who had finally found each other again. Not as objects to possess, but as equals, bound together by love and mutual respect. As they stood there in the park, holding each other, Alexander knew one thing for certain. This was the beginning of something new. This was the beginning of a love that would last, a love built on trust, respect, and a commitment to never let go. Love isn't about control, possession, or wealth. True love is about growth, understanding, and the willingness to change for the one person who matters most. It's about seeing each other as equals, not objects to be owned, but hearts to be cherished. In the end, love is a journey, a transformation that both people must make together. Alexander's story is a reminder that even the greatest mistakes can lead to the most profound realizations, and that love, when nurtured with patience and humility, can heal even the deepest wounds. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, subscribe, and share with someone who believes in the power of real love. Let's spread the message that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice, one that can change everything.